I committed suicide. On a bustling New Year's Eve. But I didn't expect that my ex-husband, who had always been indifferent to me, would go crazy and seek revenge on those who treated me poorly after my death. He even wants to die for me. But when I was alive, he clearly didn't love me. Chapter 1. At this moment, as a ghostly figure, I stand beside my lifeless body. The soul-reaping Grim Reaper stands before me, flipping through the pages of his book of fate, searching. "What is your name?" "Leona," I replied, sharing my name, hoping that the Grim Reaper would take me away so I could be reincarnated into a good family. But the Grim Reaper's gaze lingers on the pages of his book for a while, then finally says to me, "Your time on Earth is not yet over. You have a child in your womb. Why did you choose to end your life?" I glance at my lifeless self submerged in the bathtub, devoid of color. "If I didn't want to live anymore, I chose to end my life," I said. My words infuriate the Grim Reaper, and he slams his book of fate in frustration, saying, "Do you know that taking your own life before your time is like making a false emergency call in the mortal realm? It is unethical. Moreover, your unborn child was meant to have a fresh start in life, but because of your suicide, they won't have the chance to be born. Honest to the heavens, I truly had no idea I was pregnant when I took my own life." But after hearing the Grim Reaper's words, I furrow my brows and ask, why are there so many rules even when one wants to die? The Grim Reaper responds, "There are still many beautiful things in life that you need to experience. Behave and go back into your body." I recall my cruel vampire-like parents, my extravagant sister and brother, and the cold face of my ex-husband. With determination, I say, "There is nothing beautiful in my life. Just take me away. I'd rather be a cat or a dog in the next life." No matter how much the Grim Reaper tries to persuade me, I refuse to return to my body. So the Grim Reaper says to me, "The process of reincarnation for those who have prematurely ended their lives is quite complicated. Therefore, I'll give you 1 month. Spend this time as a ghost in the mortal realm. If, within this month, you still haven't found something that makes you want to live, then I will assist you in the process of reincarnation." After contemplating for a moment, I agree to the Grim Reaper's conditions. Being a ghost for a while and lingering in the mortal realm doesn't sound too bad. Chapter 2. On the first day of being a ghost, I sat on the windowsill, watching the festive lights of countless households throughout the night. The phone placed next to the bathtub only contained mass sent blessings. With hundreds of contacts in my phone, not a single person reached out to me on New Year's Eve. As the Spring Festival Gala approached its end, my brick-like phone finally rang. I floated over to check, and it was a message from my unlucky ex-husband. He sent a photo of a cardboard box filled with a few clothes and used cosmetics. He said, "You're junk. You have 1 day to take it away and don't dirty my house." My ex-husband's name is Morgan, and he lives up to it. He is a cold, heartless, and scheming CEO. Inheriting the family business at a young age, he managed to multiply the company's performance several times within a few years, earning him the title of business prodigy in the outside world. Not to mention his appearance, when he first took over the company, others didn't have high expectations for him. They even mocked him, suggesting that he should rely on his looks to make it in the entertainment industry. But perfect people always have flaws. His flaw was that he didn't love me. He had a crush on his goddess from high school, while I was just his childhood arranged partner set by our mothers. My family was affluent in the early years. Unfortunately, when I was in my senior year of high school, we went bankrupt. I have an older sister who was enjoying a privileged life abroad, and a spoiled younger brother. We also had parents who favored sons over daughters. When my family went bankrupt, my sister studying overseas was unaffected. I was constantly lectured by my parents. "The family business is struggling. You need to be understanding." I worked hard to earn scholarships and took on part-time jobs while completing my studies, fearing that I would burden my family. But then, my parents sent my useless younger brother abroad to study. They didn't even bat an eye at the annual cost of $200,000 to $300,000. While I was working at KFC, earning a meager hourly wage, my brother was partying on a cruise ship. While I was sweating in the scorching heat, wearing a heavy mascot costume and handing out flyers, my sister was skiing on snow-capped mountains abroad. It seemed that our family's bankruptcy only affected me. In my senior year of college, my parents climbed up the social ladder by getting involved with Morgan. When Morgan's mother got into a car accident while pregnant, it was my parents who found her and rushed her to the hospital, saving both her and the unborn Morgan. Upon seeing my mother's pregnancy and the decent looks of my parents, Morgan's mother suggested arranging a childhood engagement for the child in her womb. At first, I thought it was just a joke. But in my senior year, Morgan's mother, on her deathbed, remembered the childhood engagement she had arranged. And so, she found our family. Chapter 3. For my bankrupt family, this was like winning the lottery, a surprising stroke of luck. In theory, this childhood engagement was arranged for my sister. However, at that time, she had a stable relationship abroad, and Morgan had just taken over the company. People said he was a decorative pillow, and my sister wasn't willing to marry him. So, as the chosen unfortunate one, I was pushed forward. My marriage certificate arrived before my graduation certificate. When they were tallying up the credits for graduation, they even added 2 credits for the marriage certificate. I sighed bitterly, considering it a blessing in disguise. I knew from the beginning that Morgan didn't like me. When we received the marriage certificate, Morgan's mother held my hand and waited for Morgan outside the Civil Affairs Bureau for half an hour. When he finally arrived, he glanced at me briefly and said to his mother, "Sorry, I had something unexpected come up, that's why I'm late." After that, he didn't look at me again. So, I knew from the start that he didn't love me. Chapter 4. I sat on the balcony, feeling the cold breeze and watching the twinkling lights outside. The sense of emptiness that came after my suicide slowly engulfed me. I thought I should play a melancholic song to express my emotions, but unfortunately, I couldn't even move my phone anymore. Just as I was contemplating where to go for a stroll, the phone I left in the bathroom started ringing incessantly. I floated over to check, and it was that cursed Morgan calling. We had just received our divorce certificate 2 days ago, and he said there were some unresolved financial matters that needed to be sorted out. He asked me not to block his number for now. I knew his character, he never beat around the bush when it came to matters. I took it as his way of cutting ties completely, with no intention of any future contact. But why was he calling me so many times now? I didn't understand. After he finished calling, he started sending messages on WeChat, over and over again, without stopping. I listened, feeling annoyed, wondering if I could throw the phone into the bathtub. But as a newly turned ghost, I was insubstantial and couldn't touch anything physical. I just watched the phone keep ringing endlessly. After more than half an hour, the phone finally fell silent. Chapter 5. My parents' text messages came the next morning. My mom said, "It's not that we are heartless and won't let you come home for the new year. As long as you beg Morgan to reconcile with you, we will agree to let you come home for the holiday." When I was going through the divorce with Morgan, my parents were the first ones to oppose it. Because when I was still married to Morgan, even if he didn't like me, he would still provide some financial support to my family, considering our marriage certificate. Morgan's family had a big business, and with a wave of his hand, he could revive our family's industry. But once I divorced him, that lifeline was cut off. So during the cooling off period of the divorce, my parents came to my apartment countless times, trying to persuade me not to go through with it. When they saw I was unwavering, my dad even slapped me and scolded me for being ungrateful. He said that a woman who has been divorced won't be able to remarry in the future. 2 days ago, I stubbornly went to the Civil Affairs Bureau with Morgan and got our divorce certificate. Just like when we got married 5 years ago, Morgan made me wait alone at the bureau for several hours before he finally showed up. After he arrived, he didn't say a word. We signed the papers, and he got back into his expensive luxury car, leaving in a cloud of dust, without a trace of emotion. The car splashed water from the puddles onto me, leaving me soaked. I pursed my lips, forcing back the tears welling up in my eyes. With the new year approaching, I thought that after getting the divorce certificate, I would buy some festive goods and bring them home. Little did I expect to be rejected at their door. My parents kicked me out. The look my mom gave me could be described as spiteful. She said, "Do you have the audacity to come back? You know very well that our family can only survive with the business support from Morgan's family. By divorcing him now, aren't you pushing me to my death?" I lowered my head, looking at the scattered New Year goods on the ground. Years of grievances surged within me. Tears streamed down my face as I stared at my biological parents. And what about me? Haven't I suffered enough? Ignoring their insults, I turned around and walked away. At that moment, I had already prepared myself for suicide. I suddenly wondered if they would regret the things they did to me if they found out about my death. Chapter 6. In the new year, every household is filled with joy and celebration. My family is also celebrating. I sit on the bathroom vanity, watching my reflection in the bathtub. The entire bathroom is adorned in vibrant red, which, aside from being somewhat eerie, is quite festive. Around 7 or 8 in the morning, every household starts bustling with activity. The neighbors are making dumplings, and the sound of chopping fills the air, signifying their busyness. Downstairs, it seems like someone is cooking sturgeon fish, and the aroma wafts through the pipes. I touch my stomach and realize that I haven't eaten anything for the past 2 days, just before I attempted suicide. After downing a bottle of red wine, I lie down in the bathtub. Now, smelling these fragrances, I regret not eating before attempting suicide. It would have been fine to die on New Year's Day, but starving to death is another matter. As I ponder whether to float over to the neighbor's house to watch her make dumplings or go downstairs to see the sturgeon fish, someone knocks on my door. At a time like this, who would come to my house? My mind begins to search through my social circle. After graduating from university, I became a full-time housewife and lost touch with most of my previous friends. I couldn't fit into the wealthy housewives' circle either, so I have very few friends. Could it be a delivery? While my mind searches if I recently ordered something that hasn't been delivered yet, I float towards the front door. I glance outside through the peephole and freeze as soon as I see who's there. Why is Morgan standing at my doorstep? Chapter 7. I looked outside through the peephole and only saw Morgan's handsome face filled with intense impatience. He banged on the door angrily and repeatedly pressed the doorbell. "Leona, don't think this will get my attention, this trick won't work on me." Morgan's voice came through the door. I'm scared of Morgan's negative emotions. No matter how joyful I felt a moment ago, as soon as he appears and furrows his brows, I feel like the world is about to collapse. Before marrying Morgan, my parents warned me countless times not to anger him because the revival of our family business depends on whether Morgan, out of consideration for the marriage certificate, will support our family. On the night before the wedding, my mom prepared things for me while admonishing. After you get married, you need to learn how to please Morgan and his family. After all, your sister and brother still need money for school, and you should think about them too. I looked down at the wedding shoes on my feet, pursed my lips, and said nothing. If it weren't for the wedding, I would have been working today, earning 80 yuan a day from part-time jobs. Because of this, after getting married, no matter what happens, as soon as I sense that Morgan's mood is off, I choose to apologize. In the end, I can't even distinguish who is right and who is wrong. Under the brainwashing of my parents, I feel that if Morgan is angry, I am in the wrong. So even now, after attempting suicide, when I see Morgan appearing at my doorstep with such displeasure, I still subconsciously feel that I did something wrong and should apologize to him. But now, I can no longer respond to his negative emotions. Knocking on the door receives no response, and Morgan becomes even more furious. He calls me several times, and my phone, which I usually keep in the bathroom, rings with my familiar ringtone. This house is a wedding gift from Morgan's mother before we got married. She is a good person, and she told me, although it was my request for you to marry my son, I also worry that you will suffer in this marriage, so I want to give you a sanctuary. It's an apartment, not big, an 80 square meter 2-bedroom, 1 living room. Even standing at the entrance, I can still hear the sound of the phone ringing in the master bathroom. Morgan hears it too. He slaps the door with his palm and says, "Good job, Leona. You better hide for the rest of your life. Don't let me see you again. I'll leave your things at the door, and don't come to my house anymore." He hangs up the phone, kicks something under his foot, and angrily turns away. I hide at the entrance, afraid to even breathe. Everyone says they're afraid of ghosts, but now I've become a ghost and I'm afraid of Morgan outside the door. I'm such a piece of garbage. Chapter 8. I glanced out the window and saw Morgan's car driving away before cautiously floating outside the door. Morgan had sent over a few clothes and cosmetics that he had forgotten to pack when he left me at his house. There wasn't much, it all fit into a cardboard box. Morgan didn't even bother to tidy things up, he just haphazardly stuffed them into the box. I crouched down and looked at it, feeling embarrassed that my junk was thrown at the doorstep for the neighbors to see. I tried reaching out to lift the box, but my hands simply passed through it. That damn Morgan. Tonight, I've decided to go scare him at the foot of his bed. Chapter 9. In the 24th hour after my death, I stood at the foot of Morgan's bed. In my neighborhood, I encountered a ghost sister who had jumped off a building before. She told me that since I had just died, I couldn't do things like knocking over a glass to make a sound and scare humans like more experienced ghosts do. For now, the only thing I can do is to scare him through methods like appearing in his dreams when he's weak in his yang energy, especially when he's asleep. At 1 o'clock in the morning, I hovered at Morgan's bedside, but there was no one in the bed. Because Morgan was still working in his study. I yawned inside silently, realizing that if you want to be prominent in front of others, you have to suffer behind the scenes. Being a CEO, it's not a job that anyone can handle, indeed. I stretched lazily and floated to Morgan's study, only to find that he wasn't working, but sitting at his desk, seemingly lost in thought. Morgan's personality is cool, and the color scheme of the house is black, white, and gray, and the study is no exception. He only had the desk lamp on, with his exquisite features partially hidden in the darkness, and the other half illuminated by the cold-toned light, making him even more enigmatic. With his eyes lowered, the computer in front of him was lit up. Judging by his expression, I felt a strong sense of melancholy emanating from him. I floated past him from behind, inadvertently glancing at his computer screen, only to discover that he wasn't working at all. On the computer screen was his WeChat conversation with Denise. Denise said, "I'll be back to the country on the 8th. Morgan replied briefly, "What time is your flight? I'll pick you up." Denise provided her flight number and mentioned the time, and Morgan responded, "Okay." Morgan has always been like this, wholeheartedly fulfilling Denise's requests. Standing behind Morgan, looking at this brief conversation, the suffocating feeling of my heart being clenched and released was somewhat alleviated compared to when I first found out about Denise's existence. Chapter 10. Denise is Morgan's first love, the goddess he regrets losing. I found out about this half a year after marrying Morgan. In the second semester of my senior year, I married Morgan. Although I had married into a wealthy family, the favoritism I had experienced since childhood made me feel that I had to rely on myself to secure everything. So, I rejected Morgan's mother's request for me to be a full-time housewife, accompanying her for shopping and walks, and instead found an internship at a company. Life as an intern was not easy because I had a leader who was a yes man, and there was a second-generation rich kid among the interns. As a result, I ended up doing the work of two people alone, while the credit was mostly taken by the rich kid. Morgan is exceptional, both in looks and abilities. I had never been in love before, but after marrying him, being a couple, I inevitably developed feelings for him. So, whenever I saw Morgan, all the grievances I faced during my internship would dissipate. At that time, I thought to myself, I have such an outstanding husband, what else do I have to be sad about? That day, I worked overtime at the company until late at night and returned home. Morgan was already in the bathroom taking a shower. He often went on business trips, rarely coming back, and whenever he did, he was polite yet distant towards me. But still, I was happy when he came back. Anxiously, I sat on the bed waiting for him to finish showering. While waiting, his phone, which he had casually thrown on the bed, started ringing. The sound of water from the bathroom was still echoing, so I called out to him from the doorway, wanting to remind him that his phone was ringing, but he didn't respond to me. I picked up the phone and saw that it was an international number. Morgan had a wide range of business connections, and when he took me to gatherings, I met many foreign business partners. I thought that this number must be one of his business contacts. I, as his rightful wife, believed that I had the right to answer this call for him. But when I answered the call, I heard the seductive voice of a girl who seemed drunk on the other end. I was taken aback and questioned, "May I ask who you are?" But to my surprise, the girl's reaction was even stronger than mine. "Who are you, and why are you holding Morgan's phone?" I calmed my emotions and replied, "Hello, I am Morgan's wife. May I ask what business you have with him?" The girl on the other end seemed to hear something unbelievable. Just as I was about to say something else, the sound of water from the bathroom stopped. Morgan rushed out with only a towel wrapped around him and snatched the phone from my hand. I remember his cold gaze at that moment, looking at me as if I were a stranger. "Why did you touch my phone?" Chapter 11. A woman's intuition made me realize that there was something special between Morgan and that girl. That night, Morgan didn't stay at home and didn't give me any explanation. After answering a phone call, he drove away. Later, I learned from Morgan's mother that the girl's name was Denise, the goddess of Morgan's youthful infatuation. Denise is a beautiful and wealthy woman, a light that Morgan couldn't forget during his obscure and dark adolescence. But due to Morgan's lack of success in his youth, he regretfully missed out on her. After Denise went abroad to study, Morgan gradually followed his father's footsteps and learned business knowledge, becoming the successful businessman he is today. Denise has had several boyfriends since then, while Morgan has remained alone. People in their circles say that even if Morgan is married, if Denise were to call him, he would leave his bride behind and go to find Denise. Unfortunately, I am the unfortunate bride in their romantic story, the cannon fodder used to prove the depth of the male protagonist's love. Chapter 12. Because I answered Denise's phone call, Morgan got angry. His punishment for me was to go abroad and expand his business empire. He hasn't come back to see me in nearly a year. Morgan is a prodigy. Even in an arranged marriage set up by our parents, I couldn't help but fall in love with him. But this year of neglect made me realize that there is an insurmountable gap between Morgan and me. Within this gap, there are many factors, including family background, knowledge, perspective. But the biggest influence is Denise. I know he deliberately distanced himself from me because of Denise, but my parents are bloodsuckers, using the family business as an excuse, constantly urging me to ask Morgan for money. My mother said, "I know you're now Morgan's wife, have another child, and you'll have wealth and luxury. But that's still your husband's family. Only your natal family has power, so you can have confidence. In case you have a fight with him, you'll have a place to come back to." During this time of not seeing each other, I sent countless WeChat messages to Morgan, sharing trivial daily matters, showing concern for him. If he was in a good mood, he would occasionally reply with a few short sentences. But most of the time, it was like throwing a stone into the ocean. However, because of my parents' demands, I had to put on a brave face and call Morgan. I was afraid of disturbing his rest, so I calculated the time difference. It was his lunch break, but it was midnight for me. But when I cautiously made my request, Morgan on the other end just laughed coldly. Then, in a mocking tone, he said, "Leona, is it that as long as someone gives you money, you can marry them?" When I heard his words, it felt like an icy abyss. Chapter 13. I looked at Morgan sitting in the study, feeling melancholic and distressed as he stared at the chat page with Denise. My heart was filled with mixed emotions, but my determination to scare him became even stronger. I leaned in close to his ear and puffed my cheeks, blowing air towards his ear. I've seen female ghosts and ghost stories scare poor scholars who sleep in dilapidated temples like this. And indeed, the results proved that my method was effective. Morgan, who was originally in a daze, suddenly turned his head, catching me unexpectedly blowing air towards him, our eyes meeting. My heart skipped a beat, feeling inexplicably guilty. Morgan looked around, finding nothing unusual, and then he reached out to close the chat page on his computer. He wearily leaned back in his chair, pinching his nose, and let out a long sigh. I was puzzled. Wasn't the goddess supposed to come back soon? Why was he so saddened? Could it be that he felt unworthy of Denise after our 5 years of marriage, thinking he wasn't clean enough for her? The more I thought about it, the more frustrated I became. I clenched my fist and impulsively hit the bookshelf behind him. It was just an instinctive action out of anger, but I didn't expect to actually knock a book off the shelf. The book had a hardcover and thick pages, and the loud noise it made when it fell startled both Morgan and me. I was startled because... could it be that I could actually touch physical objects? Morgan was startled because... why would a book randomly fall without any reason? Is it haunted? Morgan and I both looked down at the floor simultaneously. Photos tucked inside the book scattered around. As I examined them closely, I realized they were pictures of me, with a few including Morgan. It suddenly dawned on me that before Morgan's mother passed away, she took us to the beach for a trip and, with her insistence, managed to take a few pictures of us together, albeit reluctantly from Morgan's side. She had the photos developed and gave each of us a copy. Her intention was for Morgan to frame them and take them to his office. As for my copy, I had put them all in frames and displayed them prominently. But I never expected that Morgan would hide these photos so deeply. You ungrateful person. Do these photos make you feel disgusted? I muttered as Morgan bent down to pick up the scattered pictures. Unable to hold back, I swung my hand again, knocking the glass of water off the table this time. Leaving behind a bewildered Morgan, I floated out of the window and returned to my own home. Humph, if you find my photos unlucky, then I'll show you something even more unlucky. Chapter 14. I couldn't sleep. Ghosts don't suffer from insomnia, so I lay on the couch, allowing negative emotions to overwhelm me. Indeed, even as a ghost, I couldn't escape the fate of late-night emo. On the 35th hour after my death, my sister sent me a message. Feeling bored, I lay in bed wondering what to do today when my phone in the bathroom started ringing. I quickly floated over, wondering who could be looking for me. But as soon as I entered, I was startled by my own corpse. There I was, lifeless, floating in the blood-red water of the bathtub. Even I found it eerie and terrifying. Oh. I suddenly regretted choosing this method of death. On the phone screen was a WeChat message from my sister. She said, Morgan came early this morning with New Year's goods and asked if you were home, Leona. I am your sister, I won't harm you. Reconcile with Morgan, it's in your best interest, and ours as a family. Don't be stubborn. 5 minutes later, she sent another message, who is Morgan? After the divorce, he can still come with New Year's goods to see us. Leona, when there's a way out, take it as soon as possible. My sister is 3 years older than me, and when I was young, I admired her. I thought she was excellent, with good grades. Whenever there were cultural activities at school, she always stood out. As a child, I only saw my sister as outstanding. As I grew older, I began to realize why our parents enrolled her in expensive talent classes while I could only take the easy and affordable calligraphy and traditional painting classes. And when our family business started to decline, the first thing they cut off was my inexpensive calligraphy and painting classes. The favoritism from our parents caused my admiration for my sister to diminish. She seemed to enjoy their favoritism, and naturally treated me like a little follower. After I helped her deliver a love letter to the high school bully, I was ambushed in the alley by his admirers. She happened to pass by, but only glanced at me before leaving alone. When I returned home with my wounds, she told me to keep quiet about the incident, not to tell our parents that she had me deliver the love letter. We attended the same university, but by the time I started there, she had already gone abroad for further studies. She was an outstanding graduate, and during the school's anniversary celebration, she was invited back as an accomplished alumna to give a speech. Through the crowd, she saw me, but didn't acknowledge me. When we returned home, she spoke to me with a slightly disdainful tone, saying, Leona, can you please dress yourself better? If those people find out that I have such a poorly dressed sister, I'll be so embarrassed. I chuckled bitterly in my heart. Why do I look so shabby? Don't they understand? If I choose to end my life, she will have some responsibility in it. Chapter 15. In the neighborhood, I jumped off the building and ended up trapped as a ghost, unable to move on. The ghost sister told me that if no one worships me, I would have to scavenge for food like her. Reflecting on my complicated relationships with others, I felt that I should have joined the ghost sister earlier, otherwise, I wouldn't even have a warm meal to eat. Someone like Morgan, cold-blooded and heartless, would probably spread my ashes if he found out that I committed suicide after the divorce, just to protect his reputation. Sitting on the rooftop with the ghost sister, I listened to her gossip about the happenings in the neighborhood over the past few years. She said being a ghost had its perks, she could have a front row seat to all the drama. When someone was caught cheating in the neighborhood, she would sit on top of the wardrobe and watch. While she was engrossed in her storytelling, I suddenly sensed someone appearing at my doorstep. I quickly rushed downstairs and saw Morgan's icy, lifeless face. He stood at the door, knocking. When there was no response, he called the property management, claiming to be the owner and requesting them to unlock the door. After checking the records, the property management informed him, "This property belongs to another female owner, and you have no connection with her whatsoever." When Morgan's mother gave me this house, she told me it was considered premarital property and had nothing to do with Morgan. At that time, I thought she was just trying to appease me, but I didn't expect her to genuinely care about me more than my own parents. I suddenly missed this beautiful woman who passed away 3 years ago. Morgan said, "We are husband and wife, a family." The property management said, "Then, sir, please ask your wife for the keys. We can't be of any assistance in this matter." Morgan got furious and started cursing. But being the CEO, there are many things he can accomplish that ordinary people cannot. He directly called a locksmith company to force open the door. The property management anxiously tried to stop him, but Morgan took out his business card and said, "Contact me if there's any issue." The property management glanced at it and fell silent because Morgan's company could easily buy the entire building. Morgan forced the lock open, and as soon as the door opened, a strong smell of blood hit them, accompanied by a dripping sound from the bathroom. Morgan and the property management exchanged a worried look, sensing that something was not right. They rushed in and opened the bathroom door. Amidst the property management's scream, my suicide could no longer be concealed. Chapter 16. I had anticipated how my suicide would be discovered. The worst-case scenario would be my decaying and foul-smelling body attracting neighbor complaints, with the property management knocking on the door only to find my unrecognizable corpse. To be discovered on the second day of my suicide was somewhat surprising for me. At least my current state of the body, aside from being a bit unappealing, there wasn't much embarrassment involved. However, what I didn't anticipate was Morgan's reaction. At first, he had an expression of disbelief, standing there motionless for a while, not even reacting when the property management called the police. Then his eyes turned red, and he stumbled, kneeling beside the bathtub. He reached out with trembling hands to check for any signs of breath from me and touched the gruesome wound on my wrist caused by the self-harm. His eyes were filled with tears, but he couldn't utter a word, seemingly in great agony. Sitting on the bathroom vanity, I thought to myself, indeed, he's a CEO. His acting skills could easily win him an Oscar if he entered the entertainment industry. Chapter 17. After the police arrived, they secured the scene and sent someone to console the emotionally distraught Morgan. Once they collected the so-called evidence, they carried away my body. At the police station, the police brought Morgan and my family in for questioning. Morgan appeared gloomy, but he restrained his emotions and cooperated with the police during the interview. The police asked, "Who was the deceased to you?" Morgan replied, "My wife." He paused and added, "We had just obtained our divorce papers 4 days ago." The police asked, "What was the reason for the divorce?" Morgan lowered his gaze, lost in thought. After a while, he spoke again. "She said she had no feelings anymore." Upon hearing that, I laughed. Oh, how convenient for me to be the one who supposedly had no feelings. Am I the sole authority to decide whether or not there were feelings? I recalled the day I mentioned divorce, finding him in the study, engrossed in his work. I yawned as I entered the room, but he kept his head down, ignoring me. I said, "Let's get a divorce." Morgan's hand, poised to sign, paused. He looked up at me, his expression obscure and unclear. He stared at me for a long time before finally saying, "How much money will it cost this time?" That sentence was deeply hurtful and insulting. In his eyes, I was merely a woman who married him for money. My resolve to get a divorce was firm, and I straightforwardly said, "Because there are no feelings left, I want a divorce." I thought I had made myself clear, but Morgan adamantly disagreed. His reasoning was, you say you want a divorce, and then later you'll beg me to reconcile. I'm busy, I don't have time to play these pointless games with you. In response, I slammed the divorce agreement in front of him. The 30-day cooling-off period for the divorce went by with much endurance. After I brought up the divorce to Morgan, I moved into this small apartment. At the beginning of the cooling-off period, Morgan, reeking of alcohol, came to find me. Initially, I didn't want to open the door and let him in, but he drunkenly started banging on the door, spouting nonsense. The neighbors couldn't bear it, so I had no choice but to let him in. With an intoxicated adult man and me, who was powerless, certain unspeakable things naturally occurred. The child in my belly was likely conceived during that time. He passionately called out my name as he forcefully possessed me. I stared at the ceiling in despair, thinking, he must have mistaken me for Denise. Chapter 18. I had terminated a pregnancy before. In the 3rd year of our marriage, Morgan's mother passed away. She had been bedridden before her death, and Morgan finally rushed back from abroad. He was polite but distant towards me. Morgan's mother had always wanted us to have a child, so she could find some peace of mind. In order to fulfill the mission entrusted by his mother, Morgan would come back regularly to stay with me. Cold, mechanical, without a hint of emotion, we engaged in what should have been the sweetest act. But fate had other plans, and even after Morgan's mother passed away, my belly showed no signs of life. 3 months after Morgan's mother's death, I continued working as a low-level employee in a certain company. One day, Morgan suddenly appeared at our company, and my heart skipped a beat, thinking something had happened. I asked my colleagues around me and found out that the company had a partnership with Morgan, who was now the company's benefactor. I had worked diligently for these years, and my abilities were not lacking. So when the CEO and Morgan went to the countryside to visit a vacation resort project, I was also called to join. Besides me, there were 4 or 5 other colleagues who would spend a night at the resort. Morgan appeared at the company and gave me a cold glance. That evening, while my colleagues went to soak in the hot springs, I wandered around the resort, checking the areas that were still incomplete. Then, at a corner, I encountered Morgan, who was making a phone call. Morgan also noticed me, and his attempt to act as if he hadn't seen me and turn away was no longer effective. He glanced at me, hung up the phone, and walked past me, brushing shoulders. As he passed, he left me with these words. From now on, at the company, let's pretend we don't know each other. Well, he's quite capable of that. Chapter 19. The 2-day business trip came to an end, and the CEO and his assistant left first, leaving only me and another female colleague behind. It was raining heavily that night. The female colleague who was supposed to go back with me said that her boyfriend's hometown was nearby, and she wanted to visit his parents. So she left with her boyfriend. I was left alone at the resort, trying to call a cab. This place was quite remote, and with the rain, it was difficult to get a taxi. As Morgan and his assistant walked past me, the assistant recognized me and came over to greet me. Morgan was heading back to the city at that moment. If I spoke up, maybe I could catch a ride with him. But thinking of Morgan's mocking expression, I decided to maintain my dignity. I didn't want to embarrass myself too much, so I said, I'll be going back with my colleague. She's still packing her things. Upon hearing my words, Morgan's cold gaze swept across my face. I lowered my head guiltily, too afraid to meet his eyes. After Morgan left, I continued to wait for a taxi in misery. Finally, I managed to hail a cab, but the driver informed me that due to construction in front of the resort, he couldn't enter the muddy road. He asked me to walk a short distance. The road wasn't long, but it was a downhill path. I was wearing professional attire and high heels, and I slipped and fell while walking down. I couldn't get up again. Intense pain surged through my abdomen, and I hadn't realized what had happened yet. I just watched as blood flowed along with the rainwater. The resort staff called an ambulance for me, and at the hospital, I found out that I had been pregnant. But I had a miscarriage. I couldn't accept this double blow. I called Morgan, but he hung up on me. The next day, Morgan's assistant came to the hospital to find me. I learned that the previous night, Morgan had attended Denise's birthday party and got heavily drunk. He still hadn't woken up. When Morgan finally woke up and learned about my miscarriage, he only glanced at me in the hospital and then made an excuse to leave for work. The only thing he did was to ensure that I wouldn't work anymore. He gave me a black card and made me a full-time housewife, providing me with a driver. Yes, the loss of the little life inside me was only compensated by his financial gestures. Chapter 20. So I don't understand why the current Morgan is showing so much grief. The forensic autopsy report came out, and I was determined to have died by suicide. The forensic examiner told Morgan, "Your wife had an underdeveloped fetus inside her." Morgan collapsed to the ground, disregarding the people bustling around him, and began crying in anguish. This is not his style. My parents and sister rushed over, all wearing expressions of deep sorrow. My mother grabbed the hand of a police officer and cried out, "How could this happen? My daughter would never commit suicide. There must be another reason." I sat in a nearby chair, watching their heartbroken appearances, unable to hold back my sigh. What a great act they're putting on. The ghost of the uncle who died in a car accident nearby, however, was moved by my words and gave me a glare. "Young girl, watch your words. They've already suffered enough from losing their daughter." I crossed my legs and said, "Because the one who died is me." The day before I attempted suicide, they kicked me out of the house and wouldn't let me come home for the new year. The uncle was momentarily speechless. Chapter 21. Morgan really looks so tormented, making people believe that he is a devoted husband who has lost his beloved wife. He even requested to accompany me to the morgue. The forensic examiner was hesitant. Forget about the forensic examiner, I think Morgan is playing some sick game. But Morgan has money, so after some negotiation, the forensic examiner allowed him in. My body was already frozen, slightly more dignified compared to the state of being soaked in the bathtub. Morgan knelt beside the table where my body was placed, reaching out to caress my face. "Why would you choose death over staying by my side?" I found it funny, considering it was him who pushed me away repeatedly. Morgan spent the night in the morgue, sleeping next to my lifeless body. He lay on the table, holding my hand the whole time. It disgusted me to watch, and I wondered what was wrong with this forensic examiner, succumbing to the lure of money and letting him in. I floated out, ready to cause trouble for the forensic examiner, but then I heard the forensic examiner standing at the door, with a look of regret. What a loving couple they were, now separated forever. Are you kidding me? Who will speak up for me? Chapter 22. After Morgan fell asleep, I decided to scare him by visiting him in a dream. In the dream, it was a scene from our home. I was in the study, and as soon as Morgan opened the door, he saw me standing by the window in a white dress. I smiled at him gently. "You're back." Morgan stood frozen at the doorway, his pupils trembling. I was quite satisfied, thinking that I had successfully frightened him. After all, anyone would feel uneasy encountering their recently deceased ex-wife suddenly appearing in a dream. I walked over to the desk, continuing with my gentle tone. "I poured you some warm milk. Have a drink before you continue working." Morgan took a step forward, looking at me in disbelief. "You?" I felt proud, thinking to myself, "Boy, you've been scared out of your wits." I approached Morgan, reaching out to fix his tie. "You work so hard. When you come home, you should rest properly. If you overwork yourself, I'll worry." I was a whole head shorter than him, and when I fixed his tie, he couldn't see my face. Thinking the timing was right, I made a ghostly face, baring my teeth and waving my hands to frighten him. But instead of being scared, Morgan simply embraced me tightly. He held me close, as if trying to merge me into his being. He buried his face in my neck and murmured, "Leona, please don't leave. Can you stay with me?" I was utterly puzzled. What the hell is happening in this story? Chapter 23. After spending the night sleeping in the morgue, Morgan seemed to have undergone a transformation. It startled me, considering how he had avoided me when I was alive, but now he seemed to be filled with deep emotions. The next day, Morgan was incoherent and his eyes were bloodshot. Even his assistant couldn't bear to see him like that and took care of my affairs on his behalf. Morgan returned to the apartment where I had taken my own life and lay on my bed. Watching him, it made me uncomfortable because he didn't even bother taking off his shoes before getting on the bed. Morgan didn't fall asleep. After lying on my bed for over half an hour, he began to explore every corner of my house. I didn't write a suicide note because I felt that it was meant for the person who cared about me, and I didn't have anyone like that in my life. But I had a habit of keeping a diary. Morgan found my diary, and in that moment, I understood that something scarier than death itself was dying socially. I didn't write in my diary every day, but rather summarized my thoughts and experiences over a period of time. So this diary recorded my life from my late teens until now. I regretted not destroying that diary before taking my own life. I collapsed, covering my face, begging the ghost sister who had experience with jumping off buildings and a deep understanding of the supernatural to stop Morgan. But the ghost sister simply waved her hand, saying, "I'm powerless in this situation, too." I felt completely devastated. She added, "I also want to see what's written in there. After all, I've shared so much gossip with you." Chapter 24. I watched as the ghost sister sat next to Morgan, reading my diary with him. I huddled in the corner, feeling resentful, contemplating whether I should silence both of them or risk being condemned to the depths of hell. The ghost sister looked up after finishing a section and glanced at me. "Oh my, your parents were really terrible to you." I had a sense of what they had discovered. Though it was called a diary, it was more like my suicide plan. Every entry detailed the reasons that led me to take my own life. Why did my sister and brother get to study abroad while our family went bankrupt, and only my living expenses were reduced? Why was I the one who got scolded for every mistake? On my 18th birthday, the first thing I did was get a DNA test to confirm that I was indeed my parents' child. But why did they treat me so poorly? In the summer when I turned 19, I came out of the shower at home wearing shorts to get some watermelon. That's when I encountered my sister's boyfriend, who had malicious intentions towards me and dragged me into his room. Luckily, a neighbor heard the commotion and rushed in, or the consequences would have been unimaginable. But when my family returned, all I received was a slap from my sister and the scolding of my parents. They stood united with that man, saying I was intentionally seducing him by dressing provocatively. Even though I was the victim, in their eyes, I became the instigator. After finishing reading, Morgan furrowed his brows and flipped through a few more pages. The ghost sister commented again, "So, you married him before falling in love?" I've seen this plot in novels before, where the male lead chases after the wife at the crematorium, and then the female lead forgives him, and they live happily ever after. My mouth twitched. Was there no love involved? In my diary, I wrote that I married Morgan because it would help solve our family's business problems. And since my sister had a boyfriend, it had to be me who entered into this marriage. Marrying Morgan, in the eyes of my family, was like hitching myself to a wealthy tree. I had to exchange my dignity for money. But I don't really see myself as pitiful because Morgan, the person I married, is truly exceptional. If it weren't for this family connection, I probably would have never had the chance to meet such an outstanding individual in my lifetime. I worked hard to be a good wife. At first, he didn't like me, but I didn't mind. He was forced into this marriage and needed time to accept me. I thought it was just a matter of time. As we spent more time together, I realized that there was an insurmountable gap between us. He was too outstanding, and I wasn't good enough. The person he loved was Denise. They knew each other from a young age, and Denise was so exceptional. If I hadn't intervened, someone as exceptional as Morgan should have been with someone as delicate as Denise. Because of my upbringing, I felt insecure. I felt so inferior that I couldn't even bring myself to question Morgan after discovering his affection for Denise and their frequent contact. I believed that Morgan didn't love me because I wasn't good enough. I believed that my family looked down on me because I wasn't exceptional enough. The wounds from my upbringing ran deep, and I blamed myself for all the misfortunes I encountered. Lucky individuals heal their entire lives through a happy childhood, while unlucky ones spend their lives trying to heal their childhood. I am one of the unlucky ones. Chapter 25. The police are looking for the reasons behind my suicide. But the truth is, the reasons lie within those little incidents I've encountered. Deep-rooted, intricate, they have filled my entire life. Morgan's neglect for 5 long years, my parents' endless exploitation. And then, before I filed for divorce, the email Denise sent me. Denise, the spoiled beauty who had been showered with endless affection since childhood, had a tone of arrogance in her email. She said, "I'm going back to my country. You should know where Morgan's heart lies. If you don't want to be kicked out, I advise you to divorce yourself. Don't become a stumbling block between me and Morgan. If you're worried about financial security after the divorce, I can give you $2 million, and Morgan will provide corresponding child support." Her attitude was clear. She had already given me face, and she hoped I wouldn't fail to appreciate it. My response was equally clear. I replied, "Don't others get $5 million? Why is it reduced to this with you? It's not good to disrupt the market like this." Denise gritted her teeth and said, "Just as Morgan said, all you care about is money." She cursed, but still transferred the money to me. I took the money and asked for a divorce from Morgan. It's not that I'm greedy, but because I had spent a whole 5 years without making Morgan fall for me. Now that his goddess Denise is coming back, how could I possibly be her rival? I didn't want to be kicked out, so I took the opportunity. I had planned to start a new life after receiving that money. But after the divorce, on the New Year's Eve, my parents kicked me out of the house, leaving me alone in a desolate house, drinking in solitude with no one to talk to. Negative emotions erupted, and I felt like a string that had been stretched too tight, snapping. I didn't even have a thought to hold on to. So, I cut my wrists. Chapter 26. I have written all of this in my diary. After reading it, Morgan collapsed to the ground, tears streaming down his face, repeatedly chanting my name. "Leona, how could you be so foolish? The first time you had a miscarriage, I pretended not to know you just so you wouldn't be criticized by colleagues. You said you would go back with them, so I didn't take you. It's true that I went to Denise's birthday, but it was for the business partners at her birthday party. Getting drunk was also part of discussing cooperation. I felt guilty after your miscarriage, but at that time, the project was in its final stages, and I couldn't afford to be distracted. By the time I was done with my work and turned around, you no longer wanted to bring up that matter. Denise and I, it's not what you think." Morgan, a grown man, cried his heart out in my room. Even the ghost sister next to me couldn't bear to watch. "Look at how affectionate he is. Otherwise, why don't you come back to life?" I snorted coldly, "Sister, have you ever seen crocodile tears?" Chapter 27. On the 7th day of my suicide, the 7th day tradition. Morgan didn't want to hold a funeral for me. The ghost sister said, "It's just because Morgan can't accept the fact that you're dead." I scoffed, "Don't sugarcoat his laziness in organizing a funeral." Although there was no funeral, my parents came to mourn. Instead of going to the morgue to cry, they went to Morgan and cried. The parents who kicked me out of the house on New Year's Eve now cried more sorrowfully than anyone else. Our daughter has always been sensible since she was young. We have done our best to give her the best. But she got married to CEO Morgan before even graduating, without having the chance to filially serve us. And now she's gone, we really can't bear it. My mother gave a signal to my father, and he immediately cried, "Raising this daughter of ours hasn't been easy. Now that she's gone, we don't know what to do with the rest of our lives. She was fine before, always had a strong personality, but suddenly she committed suicide after divorcing you, CEO Morgan. I think her suicide is because of you." I rolled my eyes beside them. They make it sound like they treated me so well, I could hear their calculations even in the underworld. Even Morgan's assistant couldn't bear it and said, "All this talk is just about seeking compensation." My mother's voice raised a notch, "Isn't it only fair to seek compensation?" The assistant wanted to retort, but Morgan coldly chuckled, "Compensation is indeed necessary. Who owes whom, it should be made clear." Chapter 28. I thought that when Morgan said that, he meant to give my parents some compensation to make them stop causing trouble. But that night, Morgan instructed his assistant, "Withdraw all the investments for Leona's family." The next day, which was the 8th day, it was the day Denise was supposed to return to the country. But Morgan didn't go to pick her up as agreed. He stayed in the study, reading my diary and going through my phone. How embarrassing. I really want to die. No, wait, I'm already dead. In my WeChat moments, there are many posts that only I can see. I posted them during those years when I was on the verge of giving up. There were too many, so I couldn't be bothered to delete them. Now, Morgan is going through them one by one. It's truly mortifying. Morgan slowly flips through them, his eyes welling up with tears again. I sit cross-legged on his desk and sneer, late displays of affection are more worthless than grass. Chapter 29. In the evening, Denise returned to Morgan's place, dragging her suitcase along. As soon as she entered, she began to act coquettish, saying, "Morgan, why didn't you come to pick me up?" Morgan stood at the staircase on the second floor, looking at Denise with cold eyes. Very well, this is the same gaze he used to give me before. Denise also noticed Morgan's unusual demeanor and toned down her sweet smile. "Morgan, what's wrong with you?" she asked. Morgan walked down the stairs from the second floor, ignoring the presence of his assistant, and said, "Denise, I've been telling you all along that we are no longer possible, right?" Denise's expression changed, perhaps feeling embarrassed that the assistant was still there. "Morgan, what do you mean by that?" she asked. Morgan replied, "Yes, I did have feelings for you before, but you rejected me, and I understood the reasons. At that time, my father had an accident, my family was in decline, and I couldn't match up to your status as a rich girl. Later on, I did have some lingering thoughts about you, but we were just friends. If you had any difficulties and needed my help, I would have done everything I could for you. The outside world made a big fuss about our relationship, and out of consideration for your reputation, I didn't clarify things. But why did you become more and more presumptuous? How could you have the audacity to send that email to Leona?" Denise's face changed completely. She panicked and started to explain herself, but didn't you say you didn't like Leona?" "Whether I like her or not has nothing to do with you," Morgan interrupted her directly. "I told you that I didn't like Leona 3 years ago. I married her without any feelings because it was my mother's arrangement, and I couldn't refuse. That's why I couldn't accept her at first and used my work as an excuse to escape abroad. But I am a human being, and after 5 years of being together, even an ice block would melt," Morgan said. "It's just that I'm not good with words and have always been restrained by damn pride, never daring to face my own heart, which led to this situation." The ghost sister leaned on my shoulder, enjoying the spectacle. "Wow, he's confessing." I retorted, "Confession doesn't hold much value." Morgan continued, "Leona is my wife, and I may divorce her due to a lack of emotional connection, but you can't be the reason for our divorce." After that, no matter how much Denise pleaded and begged, Morgan refused to look at her again. Chapter 30. In my subconscious, Morgan has always had feelings for Denise. Suddenly knowing all this, I couldn't digest it. So I chose to avoid it. Morgan has been staying in my apartment lately, and I can only go to Denise's home on the rooftop with the ghost sister. I just want these 30 days to pass quickly, so that the Grim Reaper can take me away. On the 11th day of my suicide, the ghost sister came to tell me that Morgan had someone beat up a man and used his connections to bankrupt him. I asked her how she knew. The ghost sister said, "I overheard it under his bed." I was speechless. No wonder she's the ghost sister, always at the forefront of gossip. I floated to Morgan's office and saw his assistant organizing some documents. As he sorted through them, he complained, "This guy is really unlucky. Who told him to make a move on our CEO's wife? Even though it happened so many years ago, revenge is a dish best served cold." I floated over and glanced at the document. The person mentioned on it was my sister's ex-boyfriend. I only mentioned in my diary that when I was 19, I was almost violated by my sister's boyfriend. I didn't expect Morgan to take revenge for me today. I smirked. Morgan still proves to be somewhat useful. Chapter 31. The ghost sister said that Morgan, for my sake, didn't hesitate to have a falling out with my family, and even used his connections to bring down my brother's company, all because he accidentally overheard my brother calling me a burden. The ghost sister said that Morgan no longer provides any financial support to my family. My parents went crazy and went to Morgan's company every day to cause trouble, and in the end, they were arrested by the police at Morgan's request. The ghost sister said that my sister's husband's family business also relied on Morgan's support before. Now that Morgan has withdrawn his investment, the financial chain has been severed. My sister even tried to seduce Morgan, but she was rejected and mocked. "You're not even worth a strand of your sister's hair." Even the rich second-generation person I mentioned in my diary, who used to target me during my internship, had their family business intercepted by Morgan. It can be said that everyone who has treated me badly, as mentioned in my diary, has faced retaliation from Morgan. But I still say, late affection is cheaper than grass. I have already suffered enough, and seeking revenge now holds no meaning for me. Morgan still stays in my apartment, making me a homeless wandering soul. So I said to the ghost sister, "Can you write something for me, leave a message for Morgan?" The ghost sister has become a fan of Morgan because of what he has done, and she thinks I have been moved as well. She said that when there's steam in the bathroom, I can write on the mirror. The ghost sister was excited. "What do you want to write? Do you want to confess your feelings? Or tell him that you will be resurrected in a few more days and ask him to wait for you?" "I can't write too many words, you choose what to write." But I shook my head. "No need to write too much, just 4 words will do." "What 4 words?" "Get out of my house or I love you too." I smiled. "Right, get out of my house." After Morgan finished showering, he looked at the 4 words "get out of my house" on the mirror and went crazy, shouting my name throughout the night. I felt annoyed listening to it, so I went to the riverside to watch people night fishing. Chapter 32. The female ghost sister said I have a heart of stone. Even though Morgan has done so much, I still can't forgive him. I shook my head. No, I can't forgive Morgan even though the ghost sister says I have a heart of stone. She looked at me eagerly, bringing me various updates about Morgan. I watched as the days passed, knowing that once the 30 days were up, I could finally leave. But then one day, the ghost sister told me, Morgan wanted to sacrifice himself for love. He hoarded a large bottle of sleeping pills, but thankfully he was saved. I felt no emotion stirring within me, and even wanted to laugh. So what if he died? It's not a big deal. Anyone can die. The ghost sister had a mischievous perspective, but have you ever thought that if Morgan died, he would become a ghost and could come find you? I was speechless once again. I immediately went to the hospital and entered Morgan's dream while he was still in a coma. I appeared in his dream, and with tears in his eyes, he tried to come and hug me. "Leona, don't leave." I raised my hand to stop him, saying, "Stay away from me. Who knows who you've been with, without any name or status. Don't you dare touch me." Morgan stood frozen in place, still confused about the current situation. "Am I dead?" "No, you're not," I said. "You mustn't die." "Why should I not die, when you secretly died yourself?" he asked. I snorted, "Because I didn't want to see you anymore, so I died." "But you can't die." Morgan chuckled self-deprecatingly. "Yes, you should hate me. I've always ignored you and disregarded your feelings." "You know, that's enough," I replied. "I'm not good with words, and I have a difficult personality. I used to think that Denise was the one I liked, that my heart belonged to someone else. But I ended up marrying you, and I didn't know how to face you or myself. So when our marriage started, I kept running away. Then when my mother passed away, and it was just you and me left in the family, I was in a low emotional state. You took care of me, bringing me hot milk late at night, leaving the lights on in the house no matter how late I came back. Countless times, you waited for me on the sofa until you fell asleep, but the food was still warm. Perhaps I had already started to develop feelings, but I was always too afraid to confront these feelings. When you mentioned divorce and said there was no love left, that's when I started to feel scared. During the cooling-off period of our marriage, I tried to restrain myself. I thought that if there truly was no love, then letting you go would be the best choice. But even after getting drunk, I couldn't resist going to find you. I thought that even if we divorced, I could still win you back. You saw marriage as a shackle, so I would wait until you were ready and you would come back to me. But because of my despicable actions, you were carrying our child in your womb and died on New Year's Eve. You were so afraid of the cold, yet you soaked in that freezing bathtub and left me. Leona, I've always been avoiding my true feelings. It was only after you left me that I realized I had fallen for you. Leona, I'm sorry. I watched as the person I once admired so proudly knelt before me, crying, saying that their lack of reaction was fake. My heart ached, and my nose tingled with sadness. Morgan, I also once saw you as my redemption, I said to him. I thought that after escaping from that hellish family, forming a new family with you, I wouldn't encounter any more unhappiness. But the redemption I thought I found turned out to be a deeper abyss. You say you had feelings for me, but in these 5 years, I have never felt the love you were supposed to bring. Morgan knelt on the ground, becoming so humble. I can make amends, I can make it right, he pleaded. I laughed out loud. There's no way to make it right anymore. I'm already dead, so you need to live well, carrying the guilt you have towards me. That is the only way you can make amends for me. Without waiting for him to respond, I continued, your mother was kind to me, and she loved you very much. I don't want you to be hurt because it would make her sad. I could have come back to life, but I refused, because even if it was all a misunderstanding, the damage has already been done. It's too late for any kind of reparation. As for me, I no longer need your love. Chapter 33. On the 30th day since my suicide, the Grim Reaper returned. He held his book of souls and glanced at the female ghost beside me, wearing a pained expression. You've been here for so long after jumping off the building. Why haven't you been reborn yet? The female ghost sister replied, being a wandering spirit is quite carefree, you know. But I knew the truth. Her grudges ran too deep, preventing her from being reborn. After scolding the female ghost sister, the Grim Reaper turned his gaze towards me. The 30-day deadline is up. What is your decision? The female ghost sister chimed in, it must be returning to life, just like in those novels where they revive and end up with the CEO. Happy ending. I forced a bitter smile. Sister, life isn't a novel. Broken mirrors can't be mended. The Grim Reaper's eyes flickered. So, what is your decision? I smiled with relief. Of course, I'll be reborn. I've already made a mess of this life, and I want a fresh start. The Grim Reaper, having witnessed many significant events, didn't ask any further questions. The female ghost sister looked regretful, but the Grim Reaper gave her a stern look. Stop wasting your time reading those silly sweet romance novels. Your man won't come back for you. Hurry up and be reborn. I bid farewell to the female ghost sister and followed the Grim Reaper into the cycle of reincarnation. The Grim Reaper said to me, do you truly have no regrets? I replied, yes, I've spent a whole 27 years proving that my life is meaningless. It's a rare opportunity for liberation, so why should I regret? The Grim Reaper crossed out my name in his book and smiled warmly at me. In your next life, I wish you a loving family and a lover who adores you. I chuckled bitterly. I hope so, if I deserve it. You do deserve it, the Grim Reaper said. You are a good girl. Well then, goodbye. The Grim Reaper stood by the entrance of the cycle of reincarnation, watching me fade into the distance. In this life, I have finally let go of all attachments.